At the Mother's Day lunch, my daughter yelled, "You don't know what it means to be a mother." I simply handed her a faded photo of me holding her at the door of a shelter. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached." At Mother's Day lunch, my daughter shouted, "You don't understand what it's like to be a mother." I simply handed her a yellowed photo of me holding her at the door of a shelter. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. My daughter Rebecca's face was still flushed with anger, but her expression shifted as she looked down at the photograph I'd kept hidden for over 40 years. The dining room fell silent. My son-in-law David stopped mid-bite. My granddaughter Lily, just 16, looked up from her phone, sensing the sudden tension. "What is this?" Rebecca whispered, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the worn photograph. I couldn't speak. At 68, I thought I'd buried these memories so deep they could never resurface. But her accusation had cut too deep. "Mom?" Rebecca's voice softened, confusion replacing anger. Is this a shelter?" I nodded, my throat tight. "The Rose Haven Women's Shelter. You were 3 months old." David set down his fork, uncomfortable. Melissa, Rebecca's wife, placed a hand on her shoulder, but Rebecca shrugged it off, her eyes fixed on the photograph. "I don't understand," she said. "You always told me we lived with Aunt Sarah after Dad died." I took a careful sip of water, buying myself precious seconds. "Sarah took us in later. But first, there was the shelter." The beautiful Mother's Day table I'd spent hours preparing suddenly seemed ridiculous. The carefully folded napkins, the good china I used only for special occasions, the flowers I'd arranged that morning. All this effort to create a perfect facade, just as I'd done Rebecca's entire life. "Why would you need a shelter?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. "What happened to Grandpa Richard?" Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly alert. We had always told her that her father died in an accident when she was an infant. A simple, clean narrative that spared her the ugly truth. "Mom?" The word was both a question and a demand. I smoothed the tablecloth, an old habit when I'm trying to settle my nerves. "Your father didn't die in an accident." The admission felt like releasing a breath I'd held for 42 years. "Richard didn't die until you were 12. And he wasn't the man I made him out to be." Rebecca stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "What are you saying? That my entire life has been a lie?" "I was protecting you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "From what?" Rebecca demanded. The memories came flooding back, the bruises I concealed with long sleeves even in summer, the accidents I explained away to concerned friends, the night terrors that plagued me years after I'd escaped. "From the truth," I said simply. "That I fled with you in the middle of the night when you were just 8 weeks old, with nothing but a diaper bag and $200 hidden in my shoe." Rebecca stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. Her eyes dropped to the photograph again, my younger self, thin and hollow-eyed, clutching my baby with a fierceness born of fear and love. "Why are you showing me this now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I've been a mother longer than you can imagine," I said. "And everything I've done, every choice, every sacrifice, every lie, was to give you something I never had, safety." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "So you've been lying to her for 40 years to protect her?" "That's convenient." I met her gaze steadily. Melissa had always questioned my place in their lives, subtly undermining my relationship with Rebecca. But I would not be baited. "Not today. You think motherhood is about birthday parties and school lunches," I said, turning back to Rebecca. "It's also about impossible choices. About waking up at a shelter and still finding a way to make your baby feel like the most cherished child in the world." Rebecca sank back into her chair, the photograph still clutched in her hand. "I need to know everything," she said. "No more lies." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of 40 years of silence preparing to lift from my shoulders. "It started the night he threw me against the wall," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. You were crying, and he'd been drinking. The beautiful Mother's Day lunch lay forgotten on the table as my carefully constructed history began to unravel before our eyes. The room seemed to shrink as I told my story. Rebecca sat motionless, her lunch growing cold, her eyes never leaving my face. David had moved to stand by the window, clearly uncomfortable with this sudden flood of family secrets. Lily, unexpectedly mature, had slipped her hand into mine halfway through. He was charming when I met him, I continued, traveling back through decades of carefully buried memories. Everyone loved Richard. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. But he changed after we married, I said, my voice steady despite the painful memories. Small things at first. Criticizing dinner. Questioning where I'd been. Then controlling the money. Then I unconsciously rubbed my wrist, where the bone had once been broken. Why didn't you leave sooner? Melissa asked, a challenge in her voice. Rebecca shot her a warning look, but I answered anyway. I did try, once, before you were born, I told Rebecca. He found me at my friend's house. After that, he made sure I understood what would happen if I tried again. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Some details were still too raw, even after all these years. Then I got pregnant with you, I said, looking directly at Rebecca. And suddenly, I wasn't just making choices for myself anymore. I described how Richard's rage had intensified during my pregnancy. How I'd planned my escape meticulously, saving small amounts of cash where he wouldn't notice, memorizing bus schedules, waiting for the right moment. The night I left, he'd passed out after throwing me against the wall. You were crying in your crib, and I knew in that moment, it was now or never. Rebecca was crying silently now, tears tracking down her cheeks. All those stories about him being a loving father who died tragically. I wanted you to feel loved, I said simply. Not abandoned. Children need heroes, not monsters in their history. So what actually happened to him? David asked, speaking for the first time. He found us once, when Rebecca was 5, I admitted. I had just started building a life for us in Portland. That's when I got the restraining order. He violated it twice. The third time, he went to jail for 18 months. I remember moving suddenly, Rebecca said, her voice faint. You said it was for your new job. I nodded. After he got out, we moved to Seattle. I legally changed our last name. And that was the last time he came close to finding us. And he died when I was 12? Rebecca asked. Car accident, I confirmed. He was drunk. That part was true. I only found out months later through a friend who'd kept tabs on him for me. But why keep lying after he died? Melissa pressed, leaning forward. He couldn't hurt you anymore. I sighed. By then, the story was set. You'd grown up believing your father was a good man who loved you, I told Rebecca. What would be gained by telling you the truth? The truth, Melissa said sharply. I looked at her steadily. Truth isn't always a gift, Melissa. Rebecca stood abruptly, walking to the window where David now moved aside for her. Her back was to me, shoulders rigid. I need some air, she said after a long moment. Rebecca, I started. No, she cut me off, turning. Her face was composed but pale. I need time to process this. You've had 40 years with this truth. I've had 40 minutes. She left the room, the front door closing softly behind her. David hesitated, then followed. Melissa lingered, studying me with new intensity. You don't look surprised, I observed. I've always known there was something beneath your perfect mother act, she said, gathering her purse. Though I admit, I wasn't expecting this. It wasn't an act, I replied. Just because you don't see the foundation doesn't mean the house isn't real. After they left, only Lily remained, sitting quietly beside me at the ruined Mother's Day lunch. Did you ever feel safe again, Grandma? She asked suddenly, her young face serious. The question caught me off guard with its insight. Not for a long time, I admitted. Safety is something you have to relearn. She nodded as if this made perfect sense, then began clearing the dishes without being asked. I watched my granddaughter move efficiently around the kitchen, struck by how adult she suddenly seemed. "Do you think Mom will forgive you?" she asked, rinsing a plate. "I hope so," I said. "Though I'm not sure I need forgiveness for protecting her." "But you lied," Lily pointed out. "Yes," I agreed. Sometimes love and truth stand on opposite sides of a line. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the worn photo album I'd kept hidden in my closet. Inside were the few photographs I'd salvaged from our life before, evidence of a history I'd rewritten to protect my daughter. My phone buzzed with a text. From Rebecca. "I found Dad's obituary online. Heart attack, not car accident." More lies? I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keypad. No, I hadn't lied about his death. But I realized with sudden clarity that Rebecca would now question everything. And I couldn't blame her. The foundation of her identity had just been shaken to its core. My carefully protected silence had finally spoken louder than I ever intended. 3 days passed without a word from Rebecca. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, picking up the phone a dozen times only to set it down again. What could I say? That I was sorry for protecting her? I wasn't. That I regretted the lies? I didn't. On the 4th morning, a knock startled me from my restless thoughts. I opened the door to find Rebecca standing there, a cardboard box in her arms. "I found this in our attic," she said without greeting, pushing past me into the apartment. "I was looking for those baby albums you gave me when Lily was born." She set the box on my coffee table and stood back, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "Open it." I approached cautiously. The box was old, the tape yellowed and brittle. Inside were papers I hadn't seen in decades, my original restraining order against Richard, hospital records documenting injuries I'd claimed were from falls, even the handwritten ledger where I'd tracked the money I was secretly saving for our escape. "Where did you get these?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "They were hidden behind the photo albums," Rebecca said. "You must have packed them when we moved from Seattle." I sank onto the sofa, picking up a faded form from the Rose Haven Women's Shelter. My intake paperwork. Name, Karen Mitchell. Age, 29. Reason for seeking shelter, domestic violence. "You kept records," Rebecca said, not sitting. "Evidence," I corrected. "In case he found us. In case he tried to take you." She pulled out a small bundle of envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. "And these?" My heart sank. Letters I wrote to him but never sent. "I read them," she admitted, no apology in her voice. "You were still in love with him." "No," I shook my head firmly. "Not love. Fear, obligation, confusion, but not love. Not anymore." Rebecca finally sat, though at the far end of the sofa. "In one letter, you said you'd consider coming back if he got help." "That was early on," I said quietly. "When I still believed people could change." She pulled out another paper, small, yellow, official looking. "This is a receipt for flowers. Delivered to our apartment in Portland when I was 6. The card said, 'Thinking of my girls.' That was him, wasn't it?" I nodded, the memory chilling me even now. "That's why we moved to Seattle the next week." Rebecca was silent for a long moment, staring at the papers spread across my coffee table. Evidence of a life she never knew existed. "The obituary was wrong," she finally said. I called the newspaper. "There was a correction printed later. It was a car accident, like you said. Drunk driving." "I didn't lie about his death," I said quietly. "Just everything else." The words weren't as sharp as they could have been. There was something else in her voice now, uncertainty, perhaps even the beginnings of understanding. "Melissa thinks you're manipulating me," Rebecca said abruptly. That you made yourself the hero of the story to gain my sympathy. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me. If I wanted sympathy, I would have told you years ago. I kept silent because I wanted you to feel normal, to grow up without fear. But I had a right to know. Yes, I conceded. Maybe you did. But Rebecca, when you became a mother, didn't you find yourself making choices you never thought you'd make? Weren't there moments when protecting Lily outweighed everything else? She looked away, but not before I saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes. When Lily was 3 and had that high fever, she said slowly, I told her the medicine was candy. I swore I'd never lie to my child the way my friends' parents had lied to them. But in that moment, you did what she needed, not what you promised, I finished. Rebecca picked up a small notebook from the box, opening it to reveal line after line of my careful handwriting. What's this? My journal from the shelter. She began to read aloud. Rebecca smiled for the first time today. Not a gas smile, a real one. For a moment, I forgot where we were. For a moment, nothing else mattered. Her voice faltered. She flipped to another page. $28 saved this week. At this rate, we'll have first and last month's rent by spring. R needs new shoes soon. Mine can wait. She closed the notebook, her fingers lingering on its worn cover. You never told me we were poor. We weren't poor, I said gently. We were starting over. Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with a sigh. Melissa. She's checking on me. She doesn't trust you. She's protective, I said diplomatically. That's not always a bad thing. Rebecca smiled faintly, the first I'd seen since Mother's Day. Is that what you told yourself about lying to me all these years? That you were being protective? Among other things. She stood, gathering her coat. I need to go. David's watching Lily, and he has a meeting this afternoon. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She paused at the door, looking back at the box of memories still open on my coffee table. Can I keep these for a while? There's a lot to process. Of course, I said. They're as much your history as mine. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment, feeling strangely hollow. The secret I'd carried for decades was now out in the open, examined and questioned by the very person I'd sought to protect. I wondered if Rebecca would ever understand that some silences aren't about hiding the truth, but about finding the strength to live with it. The temperature dropped unexpectedly that night, triggering the arthritis in my wrists, a parting gift from Richard, though I'd always told Rebecca it was from a fall on icy steps. I was wrapping my hands in a heated towel when my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. Grandma? Can I ask you something? Her voice sounded small, reminding me she was still just a child despite her mature composure during our Mother's Day revelation. Of course, sweetheart. Anything. A pause. Were you ever afraid of him finding you again? After you ran away? My throat tightened. Every day, for years. How did you sleep? The question was so specific, so unlike what I expected, that I knew something was wrong. Lily, what's going on? Mom and Melissa are fighting, she whispered. About you. About everything. Melissa says you're making it all up for attention, and Mom is defending you, which is weird because she was so angry before, and now Dad's involved too, and nobody's asking what I think. I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me. My secret had become a grenade in their household, and Lily was caught in the blast radius. What do you think? I asked gently. I think. She hesitated. I think you were really brave. And I think if you say it happened, it happened. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. But I also think Mom is really confused right now, and Melissa isn't helping. There was rustling on the line as if she was moving to a more private location. Melissa found something on the internet. About Grandpa Richard. My heart stuttered. What did she find? An old newspaper article. It says he was arrested once for hurting someone else. A girlfriend, after you. Melissa showed it to Mom, but then said it proves you could have gone to the police instead of lying for years. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, my legs suddenly unsteady. I'd never looked him up after I confirmed his death. Never wanted to know. Mom got really upset, Lily continued. She locked herself in the bedroom. Melissa's sleeping in the guest room. Dad's trying to fix everything, but he doesn't know how. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, Lily. It's not your fault, she said with surprising conviction. You know what's weird, though? I'm actually glad I know the truth. Even though it's hard. A knock at my door startled me. Honey, there's someone here. Can I call you back? It's probably Mom, Lily said. She left a while ago. I opened the door to find not Rebecca, but Melissa standing in the hallway, her face tight with anger. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect hair disheveled. Where's Rebecca? I asked. Isn't she here? Melissa looked genuinely surprised. She left after our fight. I assumed she came to you. I shook my head, unease growing. Lily just called me. She's worried about both of you. Melissa paced my small living room. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You dropped this bomb after 40 years, and suddenly our entire family is falling apart. That wasn't my intention, I said, keeping my voice level. Wasn't it? Melissa stopped, fixing me with a hard stare. You've never approved of me. Never thought I was good enough for your precious daughter. That's not true, I protested, though we both knew our relationship had always been strained. Rebecca and I were fine before this, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. We had a good life. A stable life. Based on lies I told, I reminded her. Not ones you told. I found the article about Richard, Melissa said abruptly. His assault charge from 1989. You knew, didn't you? That he hurt someone else after you left? I shook my head. I didn't. I never looked him up after I confirmed his death. So convenient, she muttered. You know what I think? I think you enjoyed being the martyr. The perfect single mother who sacrificed everything. Before I could respond, my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. Karen? His voice was tense. Is Rebecca with you? No, but Melissa is, I said, watching her expression shift from anger to concern. Why? She's not answering her phone. After their fight, she said she needed to clear her head. That was 3 hours ago. The worry in his voice was palpable. I'm trying not to panic, but with everything that's happened. I'll help look for her, I said immediately. Where have you checked? As David listed places, Rebecca's office, her favorite coffee shop, the park where she often walked, I caught Melissa's eye. Despite our differences, I recognized the fear creeping across her face. It mirrored my own. After hanging up, I grabbed my coat. I have an idea where she might be. Where? Melissa demanded. The Rose Haven Women's Shelter. It's still operating, though in a different location now. I hesitated, then added, she might be trying to connect with that part of her history. Melissa nodded stiffly. I'm coming with you. The drive was silent, tension filling the car like smoke. As we pulled up to the modern building that now housed the shelter, I spotted Rebecca's car in the parking lot. She's here, Melissa breathed, relief evident in her voice. I placed a hand on her arm before she could exit the car. Melissa, before we go in, this isn't about taking sides. Rebecca is trying to reconcile two versions of her life. That's not easy for anyone. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I know. I can't lose her, Karen. In that moment, I saw beyond Melissa's hostility to the fear beneath. She wasn't just angry about the past, she was terrified of how it might change her future. Neither can I said softly. Maybe that's something we finally have in common. As we walked toward the shelter entrance, I wondered what Rebecca had found inside. And whether any of us were prepared for what came next. The shelter lobby was brightly lit, a far cry from the dim, cramped space I remembered from 40 years ago. A young woman with kind eyes greeted us from behind a reception desk. Her name tag read Tina. "We're looking for Rebecca Mitchell," I said, anxiety making my voice waver. "Her car is outside." Tina's expression remained neutral, the practiced look of someone trained to protect privacy. "Are you family?" "I'm her wife," Melissa stepped forward. "And this is her mother." Something shifted in Tina's eyes, recognition, perhaps. "You must be Karen," she said, surprising me. "Rebecca mentioned you. She's in the community room with Gloria." Gloria. The name hit me like a physical force. Gloria Martinez had been the shelter director when Rebecca and I arrived all those years ago, a fierce, compassionate woman who had helped countless women rebuild their lives. "Gloria still works here?" I asked, disbelieving. Tina smiled. "She's retired, but volunteers twice a week for counseling sessions." When Rebecca came asking questions about the shelter's history, Gloria recognized your names immediately. She led us down a hallway decorated with children's artwork and inspirational quotes. Through a doorway, I could see Rebecca sitting at a table with an elderly Latina woman whose once black hair was now silver, but whose posture remained ramrod straight. Gloria looked up as we entered, her eyes widening in recognition. "Karen Mitchell," she said, rising slowly. "After all these years." Rebecca turned, surprise flashing across her face at seeing Melissa and me together. "How did you find me?" "Lily called me," I explained. "When David couldn't reach you, we got worried." "We were concerned," Melissa added, her tone softer than I'd ever heard it. "Are you okay?" Rebecca nodded, though her reddened eyes suggested otherwise. I needed to understand. "I found the shelter's website and came here hoping to learn more about." She gestured vaguely. "About what happened? What it was like?" Gloria patted the empty chairs at the table. "Join us. We were just discussing how different shelter services are now compared to the 1980s. As we sat, I took in the room, bright, warm, with comfortable furniture and a small play area in the corner. "It's nothing like I remember," I murmured. "The location changed 3 times, Gloria explained. But the mission never did." She turned to Rebecca. "I was telling your daughter how brave you were, Karen. Coming here with nothing but a baby and hope." "You remember us specifically?" Melissa asked, a hint of skepticism in her voice. Gloria nodded. "I've helped thousands of women over the years, but some stories stay with you. Karen and baby Rebecca were special cases." "Special how?" Rebecca pressed. Gloria looked at me, silently asking permission. I nodded. "Your mother arrived more broken than most," Gloria said gently. "Not just physically. Richard had convinced her she was worthless, incapable of surviving without him. Many women return to their abusers because they believe those lies. But you didn't," Rebecca said, looking at me. "I had you," I said simply. "I couldn't risk your safety, no matter how afraid I was." Gloria reached across the table, taking one of my hands in her weathered ones. "Karen didn't just survive, she thrived. Within 6 months, she had a job, an apartment, and was helping other women in the shelter learn to budget and save." "You never told me that part," Rebecca said. "There's a lot I never told you." Gloria turned to Melissa, whose defensive posture had softened slightly. "It's hard to understand unless you've seen it. The transformation from victim to survivor. The strength it takes." Rebecca showed me the article about Richard, I said to Gloria. "About the girlfriend he heard after me. Did you know?" Gloria's expression darkened. "I knew. I tried to find you to warn you, but you'd already moved and changed your names." She sighed heavily. "That woman wasn't as lucky as you." She stayed. The last attack put her in the hospital for weeks. Melissa made a small, distressed sound. Did he go to prison? Briefly, Gloria confirmed. Not long enough. A heavy silence fell over the table. I stared at my hands, thinking of that unknown woman who suffered what I had escaped. I found something else, Rebecca said finally, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. In that box of documents. A letter from Richard's mother to you, dated a year after we left. My breath caught. I'd forgotten about that letter. She was begging you to let Richard see me, Rebecca continued. Saying he had changed, was getting help. She included pictures of birthday gifts he'd bought for me. She looked up, her eyes questioning. You never responded. No, I admitted. His mother enabled his behavior for years. I couldn't trust her judgment. But what if he had changed? Melissa asked. Shouldn't Rebecca have had the chance to know her father? The same father who put her mother in the hospital? Gloria interjected sharply. Who threatened to take Rebecca away if Karen ever left? He threatened that? Rebecca whispered. I nodded, the old fear briefly resurfacing. The night before I left, he said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I never saw you again. Melissa's expression shifted, something like understanding finally dawning in her eyes. So everything, the false story about his death, the moving, the name changes, it was all to ensure he couldn't take her. To ensure he couldn't hurt either of us, I corrected gently. Rebecca reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Mom, I'm so sorry. All these years, I thought. Her voice broke. I thought you were just distant. Uninterested. That being a mother wasn't important to you. Being your mother was the most important thing I ever did, I said, tears blurring my vision. Every decision came from that. Even the wrong ones. Gloria stood quietly. I'll give you all some privacy. As she moved away, Rebecca turned to Melissa. I understand now why this was so hard for you to accept. It changes how you see me, how you see us. Melissa shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It doesn't change how I see you. It changes how I see her. She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. All these years, I thought you were judging me, finding me lacking somehow. I never considered you might just be protecting her still. In that moment, something shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. A beginning. As we prepared to leave the shelter, Gloria pulled me aside. You did the right thing, Karen, she said firmly. Never doubt that. I watched Rebecca and Melissa walking ahead of us, their hands intertwined. Even the lies? Gloria smiled sadly. Especially those. Some truths can wait until we're strong enough to bear them. 2 weeks after our visit to the shelter, Rebecca invited me to dinner at their home. Just family, she'd said, an olive branch I gratefully accepted. I arrived early, a habit born from decades of anxiety. Lily answered the door, immediately wrapping me in a hug that smelled of strawberry shampoo and teenage perfume. Grandma, you have to see what I found, she whispered excitedly, pulling me toward her bedroom before I could even remove my coat. On her desk lay an old photo album I didn't recognize. Where did you get this? I asked. Dad found it at Great Aunt Sarah's when he helped her move to assisted living last weekend. Lily flipped it open to reveal photographs I hadn't seen in over 40 years. There I was, young and smiling, holding baby Rebecca on a park bench. Another showed us in the tiny apartment we'd moved to after the shelter, Rebecca taking wobbly first steps toward the camera. Mom's been looking at these for days, Lily confided. She says it's like finding missing puzzle pieces. A soft knock interrupted us. Rebecca stood in the doorway, her expression gentle in a way it hadn't been since before Mother's Day. I see Lily's showing you our discovery, she said, joining us. She carefully turned a page in the album. Aunt Sarah saved everything. Even newspaper clippings from when you won that community service award for the literacy program you started. I had forgotten about that, teaching reading skills to women at the shelter after I'd gotten back on my feet. It seemed insignificant at the time, just something I could do to give back. Sarah was always sentimental, I said. Rebecca's fingers traced a photograph of us at her 5th birthday party, a modest celebration in Sarah's backyard, but Rebecca was beaming at the simple cake decorated with plastic ballerinas. I remember being happy, she said quietly. Despite everything, I remember feeling loved and safe. That was you, Mom. You did that. I blinked back tears. I tried. Dinner's ready, David called from the hallway. Melissa says to come before it gets cold. The dining room was warm and inviting, candles lit on the carefully set table. Melissa greeted me with a nod, more courteous than our previous encounters. Progress, of sorts. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than it had in years. Lily chattered about school and her upcoming recital, David discussed a work project, and Rebecca shared news about a promotion at the hospital where she worked as a physical therapist. It felt normal, the kind of family dinner I'd always wanted but had rarely experienced with the weight of secrets between us. After dessert, as David and Lily cleared the dishes, Rebecca placed a small gift box in front of me. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," she urged. Inside was a silver locket on a delicate chain. When I clicked it open, I found a miniature version of the shelter photograph, me holding baby Rebecca, on one side, and a recent picture of Rebecca, Melissa, and Lily on the other. "Our history and our present," Rebecca explained. "Both real. Both important." "It's beautiful," I whispered, struggling to maintain composure. Melissa surprised me by speaking up. "It was my idea," she admitted. "After everything. I wanted you to know we're still your family." The gesture meant more coming from her, and we both knew it. As Rebecca fastened the locket around my neck, Lily returned to the dining room. "Mom, can I show Grandma the video now?" Rebecca hesitated. "Are you sure, Mom? It might be difficult to watch." "What video?" I asked. "I did an oral history project for school," Lily explained. "About family secrets and their impact. I interviewed Gloria from the shelter." My heart stuttered. "You went back?" Lily nodded. Gloria had some old VHS tapes that the shelter made in the 80s. Educational videos for women thinking about leaving abusive situations. "And you're in one of them, Grandma." I had completely forgotten about those videos. The shelter had asked several of us who had successfully started new lives to share our stories, to give hope to others. My testimony had been anonymized, first name only, face partially obscured, but it was still me. "I digitized it," Lily said proudly. Gloria said it's still being used, just in updated formats. David set up the television, and suddenly there I was, 30 years younger, sitting in the shelter's small office, sharing my story in careful, measured words. My hair was different, my face thinner, but my voice was steady as I described rebuilding a life for my daughter and myself. "The fear doesn't disappear overnight," my younger self said. "But each day you get stronger. Each day you prove to yourself that you can do this. And one day, you realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're living." The video ended, and silence filled the room. I became aware of tears running down my face only when Lily handed me a tissue. "You helped people," she said simply. "You still are." Rebecca took my hand. "I've been angry that you kept the truth from me for so long. But watching that, I understand why returning to those memories would be impossible while you were still raising me. I wanted to be strong for you," I admitted. "I didn't know how to be both, the woman in that video and the mother you needed." "You were both anyway," Rebecca said. "I just couldn't see it." Later, as I prepared to leave, Melissa walked me to the door, a first in our strained relationship. "Karen," she said hesitantly, "I need to apologize. I accused you of manipulating Rebecca, of lying for attention. I was wrong." "You were protecting your family," I said. I understand that better than most. She smiled faintly. Rebecca wants you to come for dinner every Sunday. If that's okay with you. I'd like that very much. As I drove home, the locket warm against my skin, I thought about the woman in that video. How terrified she had been beneath her brave words. How desperately she had wanted to create a life where her daughter would never know that kind of fear. I had succeeded in that, at least. Rebecca had grown up without the shadow of violence, without looking over her shoulder, without flinching at loud noises or raised voices. The cost had been a distance between us that took 40 years to bridge. Had it been worth it? I still believed it had. The following Sunday, I arrived at their house to find Rebecca in the kitchen, attempting to make my mother's old lasagna recipe. I thought we could start a new tradition, she explained, laughing as she struggled with the layers. You teach me the family recipes I never bothered to learn. I'd love that, I said, rolling up my sleeves to help. Lily wandered in, immediately gravitating toward the sauce for a taste. Hey Grandma, I got an A on my oral history project. Ms. Winters wants to submit it to a national competition. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Melissa joined us, setting the table with easy familiarity. Lily, didn't you want to ask your grandmother something? Lily nodded eagerly. Would you come speak to my class? About the shelter, and how you helped other women. The request took me by surprise. For so long, that chapter of my life had been sealed away, too painful to revisit. But now, looking at these 3 generations of women in this warm kitchen, I realized that my silence had served its purpose. It was time for my voice to serve another. I'd be honored, I said, touching the locket at my throat. Some stories are meant to be shared. Rebecca smiled, the last walls between us finally crumbling. Yes, she agreed softly. They are.